Hey folks, we're about to start another episode of Ask Us Anything about electrochemistry. But before we begin, because we have some extra time, there are a few things I'd like to go over first. While we're waiting for the live stream to start, type your question into the chat. The sooner we get your question, the sooner we'll be able to answer it when the live stream starts. We usually try to answer questions in the order that we receive them, but it's definitely possible that we get so many questions that when your question comes up, we're out of time. If you are a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 YouTube member, you do get priority in us answering your question. You also have the opportunity to join us on the stream to either share slides or talk to us in person about your specific electrochemistry research questions. If you are a Tier 1 or Tier 2 member on our YouTube channel, you will find in the community post the link and password to join us on our broadcasting platform. We get a lot of questions about electrochemistry, whether it's through our YouTube comments, webinars, email, phone conversations. We get lots of questions from people about electrochemistry. And sometimes responding to a YouTube comment or trying to describe a cyclic voltammogram over the phone isn't always the easiest way to teach or describe electrochemistry. That's why we created this live stream. In the Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry live stream, you can ask us any questions you have about electrochemistry, and we can use better tools and take more time to describe some of these electrochemical processes to help you with your research and understanding of electrochemistry. Now, in our time of doing this live stream, we've observed that if you ask a very, very specific question, we might not be able to answer it. It'll be a little bit too specific for us. On the other side, if you ask a very broad question and you're interested in just a very broad understanding of cyclic voltammetry, we have separate tools, we have other resources to help you. So we do have a YouTube video on cyclic voltammetry, an introduction to the subject. And if you're interested in more of a long-form course on, say, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, we have a 5-part EIS webinar series for our Tier 2 YouTube members that you can access at any time. Now, if you weren't aware, Pine Research Instrumentation is a company that produces a wide array of high-quality electrochemical research equipment, from potentiostats to electrodes, electrochemical rotators, cells, different types of accessories. Pine Research has been supporting electrochemistry research and teaching for decades. Recently, we have developed new electrochemical simulation software called Aftermath Live. Aftermath Live is an online streaming platform where you can simulate popular electrochemical techniques like cyclic voltammetry. It's a powerful research tool, as you might simulate a cyclic voltammogram to support an electrochemical mechanism for your redox reaction that you're studying. But Aftermath Live and cyclic voltammetry simulation is also a very powerful tool when it comes to just learning electrochemistry. In fact, in previous episodes of the live stream, we have used Aftermath Live and our simulation software to answer some of the questions that you have. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can get a 10% discount on your first month of the basic and research editions of Aftermath Live by using the coupon code PINEYouTube10 when you're at checkout. Aftermath Live is a powerful tool and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Go to aftermathlive.com to check it out. Link is in the description below. Our live streams are normally on Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. They normally last about 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. If you miss the live stream, you'll always be able to watch it on our YouTube channel, and in the description we put timestamps for every question that was asked. This way you can look through the description and find the questions that are most relevant to your research and then watch those at your leisure. Also, we apologize in advance if we mispronounce your name. If on the YouTube channel you can put anything you want as a name. It could be a Pokemon, it could be a string of numbers. But if we call you out and we accidentally mispronounce your name, we apologize in advance. Lastly, please do not spam the chat. We've had numerous instances of people either talking about inappropriate things or constantly filling the chat up with some kind of spam. We will remove you if you do that. Let's keep the chat very clean and just talk about electrochemistry. Sometimes it takes a while before we're able to answer your question. So if you keep typing your question into the chat and spam the chat, then we will remove you from the chat. But if it's been a while and we may have forgotten about your question, one message as a gentle reminder is all that's required. All right, I think that's all of the housekeeping things. Now, let's start the live stream.
So anyway, I was telling my mom, if you go in that room again, there's going to be some terrible. Oh, hey, everybody. Sorry.
Hello, everybody.
That's one of my favorite shticks, not to give away the game here.
Oh,
I love when podcasts or something start like in the middle of a conversation that's about some crazy thing.
yeah.
So expect more of that.
Expect more of that.
Because that's one of my favorite shticks, if you will.
Yes.
Like, so I told him, if you take one more bite, I'm kicking you out of my house forever. Oh, well, hey, everybody.
That's great.
Fun.
That's great.
Fun. Speaking of fun, thank you to Ari.
Yes.
Who just became a tier 2 member.
Thank you so much, Ari. Yeah, we appreciate YouTube membership. It helps keep this content kind of alive. We work for a company that makes scientific research equipment. Our survival is based on that. So when our boss is like, where are you spending your time on? And it's like, well, we're just we want to help people for free. They're kind of like, what are we doing? Well, no, when you sign up to become a member, either whether it's a tier 1 or tier 2 YouTube member, you help support this channel and what we try to do. So thank you, Ari, and for any of else watching, I hope you also consider joining at some point.
Also, just to be clear, I survive on pumpkin spice lattes, but that's just me. Like we survive as a company, or we get paid to do our jobs. But I personally survive on pumpkin spice latte. Just to be clear, that's my survival mechanism.
Yes.
So,
and it worked. Chris, good to see you. It's just like
sorry.
Yeah.
What did you walk? You walked in on the greatest intro for a live stream in the history of science. That's what you walked in on. Just top-notch professionalism over here. That's what you walked in on.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody.
Yes. Welcome. And before we get started, because we already have some questions coming up next week, my colleague Tim was on the live stream
one time.
And maybe
he's not nearly as famous as us. So if you come by the booth, I know you're about to mention this. Make sure you mention to Tim just how much less famous he is than Alex and I. He loves hearing about how famous you and I are.
Just loves hearing that. And
because we've been at the company a little less time than him, and we have taken over the fame because we're on YouTube all the time. So so it's very fun.
There are still some people very loyal to him. Can't confront them.
We don't care about them.
That's okay. That's okay. Can't win them all.
That's right.
But yeah, next week, the ECS Chicago meeting. Make sure to stop by and say hello. But let's start. We do have a couple questions, so let's start. Let's just start and kind of get into it. Jesse is asking, for the 2 and 3 electrode system for the sample, what will be the relationship between the potential window of both, and also for symmetric and asymmetric, as well as 3 electrode? So usually when people say things like symmetric and asymmetric, that makes me think about batteries.
Yeah, batteries or capacitors or something like that. Usually a symmetrical cells are like that. But probably we can handle this question in 2 parts is my guess. So I think you handle well the 2 and 3 electrode sort of phenomenon of the purpose of the reference electrode and how that is. And then I can talk about from a battery perspective, maybe a little bit, I guess. If we want to sort of this is sort of encompassing all of that is what this question's sort of encompassing, I guess.
Yeah.
So supercapacitor.
Supercapacitor. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Batteries are supercapacitors.
Supercapacitors. Okay.
So
So you want to talk about?
I was punting to you if you want to do like if you want to. I mean, I can talk
just
about
the nature of potential between 2 and 3 electrode systems.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't know if you. I mean, I have some slides. I don't know if you have some slides on it. Or you just want to talk about it briefly, but
I'm trying to think about it. But basically, so the relationship between the potential window. Usually, the potential window. Oh, okay. All right. Yes, I thought about this for a little bit. Now I think I have a way of describing this. So I'm just should be sharing my screen now, which I think should came up. So I'm gonna just do. I'm gonna start with a basic, just cyclovoltammetry. So in a 3 electrode configuration, 3 electrode. So so in a 3 electrode configuration, if you do a CV, you're looking at the voltage of the working. I'm just going to note this: working versus reference. And then we have our current on the y-axis, and there is this potential window, which I'm just gonna, it's going to be something like this. It's a range where nothing, no redox activities are occurring. So we call that the potential window. Now, this potential window is unique or designed specifically to talk about one electrode. It's the working electrode. So it's only the working electrode that has this potential window. So we know that the potential of that working electrode can be swept, again, with respect to some known reference point, within this window, and there won't be any redox reactions. We can have the voltage move between those two. Now, that is one window. In a 2 electrode configuration, when I just have a cell, and then I've got one electrode, I got a second electrode, and there's kind of a voltage. There is this kind of question of like, okay, well, what is the voltage that I'm measuring? All right, so what is this voltage? Especially keeping in mind the idea that these potentials have these electrodes have potential windows by with which something occurs. So the potential, and here's the thing I've always found, it's weird, but the potential that you measure at your voltmeter in a 2 electrode configuration is the difference. It ends up being the difference in the potential between the metal here and the metal there. Now, granted, you're talking about supercapacitors, but there is this potential difference where we have what I call the inner potential of the metal and then the potential of the solution. And it ends up being the case that in the 2 electrode configuration here, the solution potential gets subtracted out in the math. So what we measure in this voltmeter is, you might just call it like phi 1 minus an IR compensation minus phi 2. And all you do is you're just measuring this voltage difference. And these voltages have a potential window about them. So depending on what the system is, this voltage window can actually be very different without current naturally forced into the system. Once the voltage, I believe this is the case with lithium ion batteries, but the formation of the solid electrolyte interface is a result of the fact that the voltage difference necessarily puts one electrode in this range where some redox chemistry occurs. Like, lithium, the electrolyte, doesn't actually survive at this certain potential, so
that's correct.
It degrades into this thing. So, which is necessary for the stability of lithium-ion batteries. So that's kind of how I think about it, just based on how your question is worded. I don't know if I'm making a whole lot of sense, because it is, you are asking about, for 2 and 3 electrode systems, for the sample, what will be the relationship between the potential window for both, which when I'm imagining both electrodes, in symmetric and asymmetric, as well as 3 electrode configurations. So you're talking about the potential window of each electrode in your electrochemical cell. So that's, I guess, where that's how I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the CV of I'm thinking about the CV of one of these, and it's like, oh, the CV of this electrode looks like this, and the CV of this other electrode looks maybe slightly different, and they both have different potential windows that they can exist between without reactions occurring. But I don't know if that's something that you can easily measure. I suppose you can always use a potentiostat to, like, charge, discharge, a capacitor or a battery moving along this graph, basically. Although for battery materials, it wouldn't look like this. You want to have the potential doesn't move that much as you put a lot of current into the system. So I feel like I'm kind of rambling on. I think I need a little bit more clarification about the question.
Well, I think the other thing to note maybe is that, you like showing a CV and then showing a two electrode thing. Like, one of the main, differences and things to clarify, and this question gets somewhat asked, I guess. Let me just see what so for this same sample, 3 electrode potential window is smaller than 2 electrode. Not necessarily. Okay, so maybe this will kind of get to this,
okay.
Jesse, this question, this answer. Like, the key, of course, being that with a 3 electrode system, there's a reference electrode, and with a 2 electrode system, there is not. Okay, so often, as a battery person, I would use the term, sometimes voltage and potential are used interchangeably. We tend, as electrochemists, to prefer the word potential because it refers to the difference in electrical energy, if you will, or whatever, between 2 points or 2 things, 2 electrodes, right? Which is usually a working and a reference electrode. So with the 3 electrode system, the potential window is of the working electrode. That's what it is. It is not taking into account the counter electrode. It is not taking into account the other electrode, so to speak. So when you have a 3 electrode system, you are really isolating one of the 2 electrodes that are passing electrons back and forth, right? That's why we sort of have the term counter or auxiliary electrode in that setup, because it's like this is the wrong word. I just don't know the better word in the moment. Like, it's a throwaway. It's the other electrode. We don't care. We tend to not care about it. We don't monitor it. We're really studying what's happening at the working electrode. Okay. And so the potential window is a known potential because it's with respect to a reference electrode, which we can normalize to like NHE. We can normalize to anything we want, but it's known potential, right? It's 1 volt to 0 volts versus SCE, which is, 1.2 to 0.2. To do the math right, it's either that way or the other way. Versus NHE. I have to add it anyway. Whatever. The point is, like, for some reason in my head, I always like do it backwards and I can't. Anyway, the point is that those are known. Like, that's the potential window. That's the potential window of my electrode in a 3 electrode system. In a 2 electrode system, it is I use the word voltage because it is the potential of the working minus the potential of the counter, because you just have 2 electrodes. The counter is also the reference. In this case, you actually do not know the potential window, so to speak, of either electrode. You know the voltage of the system itself. The voltage at any time in a 2 electrode system, whether it's a supercapacitor or a battery or a fuel cell, is the potential of one minus the potential of the other. You only can know the difference between the 2 without a third reference electrode somewhere in your system. You cannot know what the potential window is of either electrode independently. You only know the voltage of your system, which means 2 things. One of them is the first thing that I just said. It means that, well, what is the potential window in a 2 electrode system? I don't know, and neither do you. You can't know. You can't isolate that information. The other thing you do know is that in a 2 electrode system, the results you get for the voltage and the current, or the potential and the current, whatever words you want to use, are inclusive of both electrodes, anode, cathode, working counter, whatever, because both of them are part of the drive and sense lines. Whereas in a 3 electrode system, everything you're measuring is basically just the working electrode. So in other words, if you want to know the potential windows in general, or a potential window of a material, you need a reference electrode because you need a reference point to know where the potential is. Otherwise, in a battery, if I went from 4 volts to 3 volts, now, because we've studied batteries collectively as scientists for such a long time, we kind of know the independent voltage profiles of the anode and the cathode. They both move in one direction when you go from charge to discharge. And so the difference, goes from 3 to 4 volts or whatever. But like in a vacuum here, let's just say I go from 3 volts to 4 volts. Does that mean that my cathode went up by a volt and my anode stayed at the same? Right? But if my cathode was at 3 volts and my anode was at 0, the difference is 3. Well, if my cathode goes to 4 and my anode stays at 0, the difference is 4. Okay, but what if my cathode went to 3.5 and my anode went to minus 0.5? That difference is also 4. You don't know which of those scenarios I just said happened, right? I'm just making up numbers here, but the point is the difference of 3 or 4 or 3.5 or 12 or any number, there's an infinite number of voltages at each of those electrodes that could give you that voltage. So you don't know what the potential is of the individual ones at any time. So if you really want the potential window, if that's what you're after of a specific electrode, you have to have a reference electrode. I hope that clears that part up. That's one of those fundamental things.
Yeah.
And most of the time in batteries, to be clear, that's fine. We are actually just interested in the voltage of the battery itself because it's related to its charge-discharge prowess. And, sometimes when a battery goes poorly, it is because one has been too far charged compared to the other. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that because you're not controlling each one independently. And sometimes like, oh, well, the cathode went haywire, I have a mismatch in capacity. There's things like that can mess with your battery. But fundamentally, if potential window or just potentials in general are what you're after, you need 3 electrodes. You need a reference. Yeah. So I hope that's clear, Jassy. If you need a follow-up, please type more. If we didn't quite get to the crux of your question, I think hopefully kind of covered, most of what you seem to be needing clarification. So please comment if you need some more clarification there. I think Indiwari has the next question here.
Oh, there was another question by Angeliki.
Oh, sorry, I missed one.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get to you. We'll get to you later.
Yes.
But yeah, her question came first. I think it's a her. She's asking, do you think PEM or solid oxide fuel cells will have more researching interest for the future?
Good
question. I guess this is an opinion piece.
I mean, I don't know. I'd say PEM, but probably mainly because it's more accessible. SOFCs are harder to study. They require, 600 to 800 degrees Celsius, more stringent materials that can survive really elevated temperatures. So just from the simple fact that, take any sort of research lab in the world, generally speaking, and say, oh, we're going to add a fuel cell element to our research, lab or group, whatever, right? Well, something that occurs at room temperature or up to like 80 C, is pretty accessible, just generally speaking. Like you can get, you get a fuel cell test station or something, and you get some water and hydrogen, oxygen, some hardware. I'm trivializing the thing. Obviously, I've done PEM fuel cell research. It's very difficult. Like there's a lot to it. But SOFCs, you need like furnace, heating elements, insulation, a way to make sure that you don't die as you heat something up to 800 degrees Celsius. Like it's intensive. It's difficult. Now, that doesn't mean that the technology is worse or anything like that. That's not what I mean. I would just say that as an interest and an accessibility from that perspective, PEM fuel cells are, just a little bit easier to achieve in the average research group, let's just say, especially if you need X amount of dollars to set up an SOFC research lab. It's like, well, not everybody's going to have the ability to spend way more money to build the setup. Like when I was in graduate school, we had we called it a fuel cell center, Center for Research Engineering and all this kind of stuff. And there was a whole room dedicated to molten carbonate or solid oxide fuel cells. And it was, I never did stuff. I did room temperature stuff, or whatever, which was, again, part of the point here is easier. But it was just this whole room. And it was I remember looking at it and being like, my gosh, it was there's aluminum tubes everywhere, for venting, right? And just heating elements and insulated stuff and controllers everywhere to make sure that the heat stays and the temperature stays. And then you have the electrochemistry of it all and the testing, and you have the oxygen streams. I think one side's oxygen, one side's maybe a fuel of some sort.
Yeah.
It's fuel on one side, oxygen on the other. You get this oxygen radical SOFC technology. I'm not super knowledgeable about, but you need the gases. You have to heat up the gas streams. There's a lot there, right? And again, it's a cool technology, but it's just more difficult. So from that perspective, now it may perfectly be that SOFCs are going to be a better long-term, scientific technology, which could certainly be the case. But in a vacuum, my answer would be PEM.
Yeah. No, I don't know enough about either. I do remember somebody telling me about SOFCs, and when they described it, I just thought it was super, super cool, because they mentioned how they could dramatically increase the fuel efficiency of just gasoline or something. Like a gallon, normally you get maybe 300 miles per tank or something on your car. This could go to 1,000 in principle, if just based on how it utilizes the energy.
Yeah, they're very efficient.
They end up being very efficient. I just thought it was super cool, the idea that you could also, PEM fuels just have to have certain geometries, because SOFCs are all solids. They can have almost any geometry possible, and then I didn't study very much in the way of I just had traditional electrodes and solutions, but it's a solid, and then the electrode is just painted on, so you can have all kinds of interesting design engineering things that can create some pretty cool stuff in terms of how it's incorporated. But of course, as you said, it's got to be super high temperature to work, which is not very practical.
Actually, that's one of the things that I think generally makes it tricky, from even the efficiency. Sometimes I could be wrong about this, but my understanding, I believe, is that the efficiency can be calculated without taking into account the energy required to keep it at temperature.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll get a great number. It's super efficient.
Yes.
But if you take into account the energy required to heat everything up, which is fair.
Yeah.
The technical efficiency will go down.
Yeah, will go down. Of course,
it'll be artificially lower or whatever. But
yes,
that doesn't mean the technology is not wonderful, right? It's really cool technology.
Yes, no, that's a good point. But anyway, Angelique, I hope this was helpful. Just our random points of view on PEM fuel cells and solid oxide fuel cells. So yeah. I'd probably also recommend find companies, find researchers who are doing it, and you'll just get some experience, and you'll learn more about them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question from Indeed Wari. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. What's the role of IR compensation, and how does uncompensated resistance affect the overpotential? I'm doing nitrate reduction to ammonia with copper-based catalyst using a single compartment cell. Sure. All right. This is right up our alley. So we I don't know. I'm always passionate about talking to people about IR compensation. It's that's the hill I'm going to die on. Is making everyone aware of IR compensation. So what is IR compensation? First off, I do have a couple of videos. If you find my answer not satisfactory, there are some videos on our YouTube channel that go into much more detail. But IR compensation, also called IR drop, basically the way you can think about it is like a resistor. So if you have resistance in any system, and then you have any kind of power source, just like a battery or something, there is a quote, a voltage across this resistor equal to V equals I times R. So this maybe makes more sense if I drew it like this. It's easier if you think of it as like I have multiple components, for example. So the voltage, so if I have a total voltage across my system, that voltage is kind of split between these two resistors. So if I have an electrochemical cell and I model the electrochemical cell as a capacitor that represents the electrical double layer, and a resistor that represents charge transfer resistance. The charge transfer resistance in your case is the nitrate reduction to ammonia. Then, so I would call this RCT, and I would call this CDL. Okay, and then we have this solution resistance. So this is my reference electrode, and this is my working electrode. Right. So this is a physical electrode. This here represents your physical electrochemical cell, the surface, if you will, the surface of your electrode, where your catalyst, your copper-based catalyst, is located. This, we'll just call this RU, is the solution resistance. This is just a natural, all the distance of solution of ionic conductivity is between the reference and the working electrode. It's contained in this RU. So when you tell your potentiostat, hey, apply +1 volt to, from the working to the reference electrode, a fraction of the applied voltage is consumed in this solution resistance. And what that ends up doing, that fraction of the voltage is equal to the resistance times the current. And so what ends up happening is you tell your potentiostat apply +1 volt between the working and the reference electrode. But in reality, you end up applying something like 0.8 volts. That's what you actually applied to this system. Because 0.2 volts, I'm just making up some of the numbers, of course, but 0.2 volts was consumed in this IR, in the solution resistance. So this is the problem, is that you tell the potentiostat apply +1 volt. Your system only feels effectively 0.8 volts. So there's this error in terms of what you're telling the potentiostat to do, what you want the potential to be across your electrode-electrolyte interface, and what the voltage actually is. And the way that this plays into, let me just make sure I got the rest of your question. How does it affect overpotential? And what it does is basically to overcome the effect of IR drop is you need to add additional voltage. So let's say the redox species actually, if it was a peak in a CV, for example, and it was supposed to happen at +1 volt, well, IR compensation would make it so that you would only see it at +1.2 volts. It has the effect of shifting the voltage over to higher potentials, because you need to overcome the loss from the solution resistance. So as a result, when you have more solution resistance, when you have more uncompensated solution resistance specifically, then you end up getting, you have to go to higher voltages to get the same amount of current. And that can lead to inaccuracies when you're measuring things. You have higher overpotentials, all because of solution resistance. So that's the quick answer, I should say, of what IR compensation is, and what is IR drop. So, Indiwari, please let me know if you have any further questions, if you need additional clarification. I can go into more stuff about like how you can adjust for the IR drop, there are physical techniques. You can add more supporting electrolyte. You can minimize the amount of current that's passing, because there's there's the I and IR. And then potentiostats have the ability to add additional potential to compensate dynamically for the loss in potential due to IR drop. So that's it. Jawari, let me know if you have any further questions on that.
I'm gonna link. I was just trying to find it.
I'm
gonna link your IR drop video.
Yeah,
here.
that might
so this
be
is
helpful.
IR drop /IR compensation video on YouTube. So this is a video Alex made some time ago on that very topic. I just wanted to link that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Next, I think is this person with a Tamil name. And I tried to translate it, and it translates to Namaku and Napa, which appears to mean "what about us?" And I don't know what that means. That's a very so I don't know if Google Translate's leading me astray, but I know it's Tamil because I've been to Tamil Nadu in India before, so I recognize the language, but I can't read it. So that's the best that I can do. But anyway, the question is good. It says, I was doing my research at a supercapacitor after I completed my PhD. I'm interested in joining industry. Could you please tell how I reach the industry? Well, first of all, it depends on what country, right? So if you are in Tamil Nadu province of India, it's in the south of India, I frankly, I don't know how much industry there is down there. I know India as a country in general has, fairly substantial industry spread around the country, right? Maybe perhaps there's more in places like Mumbai or Delhi in the north or the west, or in Kolkata in the northeast. But you might have to, in some sense, part of my answer is it's geographic, right? Because industry in electrochemistry related fields is it depends on your outlook, right? Of course, fortunately or unfortunately, not everywhere, right? So if you're like a teacher or I don't know, so one of these jobs where like there's a school everywhere, you could in theory get a job anywhere in any country, any city. There's need for hospital workers, teachers, construction workers, like things like this, right? Like there's just always likely to be people anywhere who need to do those jobs, but there isn't necessarily a company studying supercapacitors in every city in the world. So to a certain extent, an answer for how do you reach industry is go to the cities or places or countries where the industry is. Now I know that that's not always easy. Of course, it's expensive and difficult sometimes to relocate, of course. But that's part of the answer, right? As it relates to your field. The other one, of course, being if you're in India or if you're in a different country, I suppose, and you're looking to come to a different country, right? There's just logistics associated with that, so that can also make things kind of tricky. If you want to go work in Europe, it's like you can't just go. You have to get a work situation. Not every European country operates the same way. And so you'll have to kind of figure out the rules and the regulations related to something like that. But I guess the other part of this, as far as the logistics aside, is be open to finding a job in a company that isn't exactly what you studied. It will perhaps be rare or difficult to match up exactly the like supercapacitor in your case, right? Or whatever, batteries or fuel cells, whatever, research that you did with a company doing exactly that. Because, there's a lot of specific research that people do in university and electrochemistry all the time. And there's, the industry jobs and technologies will vary. Like you might study electrochemistry and learn a lot doing supercapacitors and batteries, and you'll learn a lot of different electrochemical techniques and characterization techniques. And then you'll go work for a company that does water purification, and it's like, well, this isn't what I studied, but like there is an electrochemical aspect to water purification, for instance, and maybe I can get a job there. So be open-minded about the exact industry or the exact technology that you might be working on, because most of the time with a PhD, especially in engineering or a scientific chemistry, electrochemistry related field, you're not necessarily demonstrating your ability to know the specific topic that you studied, but rather the ability to solve problems, the ability to understand the science, how to use the science to solve problems, how to characterize and study and research. My advisor in grad school always used to say that they call it a doctor of philosophy, because you're learning how to think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just do a bunch of research and click a bunch of buttons and polish a bunch of electrodes. It's called philosophy for a reason, even for chemists and electrochemists, because you're learning how to think and organize your thoughts. And that is a skill that if you can demonstrate to an employer you know how to do, you will be very valuable, because an industry and a company, they're looking for people with skill sets, but they're also looking for people who can demonstrate the ability to communicate and solve problems well, in your field. So consider that, and do your homework before you reach out to any companies. Understand what they do, what they make, what they could use, and how you could benefit these companies, what your skill sets could lend. If you can't answer that question, you might need to find a different company, right? I don't know. Those are some of my general thoughts, I guess I'd say. I don't know if you have anything else to add. That's just
No, I mean, I think that's good. Lots of professional organizations.
that's a good one. Yeah.
If you're at the ECS meeting, for example, there's lots of companies, lots of people to talk to, network, just reaching out to people. I do feel like there's much more battery industry folks than per se supercapacitor industry folks, and so you may find yourself pivoting a little bit more towards batteries, because they're in the it's a strongly related field. But yeah, no, if you're interested in joining that particular industry, continue to network with people. And yeah, some it's just looking for jobs, job opportunities, things that are out there. And yeah, as Neil said, uh, don't box yourself into just like, I only want to work on this one particular thing. You'd be surprised how many other things there are out there. There's also a strange timing, I would say, where you might just want to work for a company related to the sciences, but might not be like what you really, really want to do, because there's just not as much money or funding for supercapacitor research. But in a year or two, maybe there will be, and there'll be an opportunity for you to go to another company that has supercapacitor stuff. But yeah, I would say networking is very helpful. And I put this thing on LinkedIn, just like to reach out if you want to like visit and say hello, just to let me know. But one thing you can do is, if you find somebody on LinkedIn who has the kind of experience that you're interested in, or works at the job that you're interested in, you could reach out to them and just ask them like, hey, can if it's possible, can I schedule maybe 30 minutes of your time? I'm interested in learning more about the field that you're in. I have just a few questions. And most people are absolutely happy to talk, spend 20, 30 minutes just answering your questions about networking, and
especially at a
connects.
meeting,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're like out of their office and they're happier because they're getting to travel and have fancy dinners and breakfasts out. So they're probably in a better mood and they're happy to talk to you,
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I like going to trade shows. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's a little chill and relaxing, and you're
We're also very busy sometimes.
Well, it's true. It's
It can also be super busy.
It's true. It's true.
Which is good.
But my experience has been the same, that people are generally pretty happy and receptive to like, yeah, we could grab a few minutes, a coffee between sessions, and talk to you for 5 or 10 minutes or 15, 20 minutes, depending on how much you need. People are usually good about that at meetings. So yeah, that's a good idea.
I was just saying, like, if you can't go to a meeting, if you just message someone
Oh, well,
on
that too.
LinkedIn.
Either way,
Yeah,
yeah.
either
Add a
way, but
meeting
yeah.
or message
just
them,
message them
and
directly.
and now everybody uses Zoom and whatever, so you can
Yeah,
sit over
that's
there,
right.
you can video chat for a minute with somebody,
Yes.
FaceTime them, you know.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Let us know if you have any like further detailed questions about it. We'll be able
And
to
good
get back
luck
to you.
if you're looking for
luck.
an industry job. It can be tough, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting a foot in the door, but good luck to you.
Yes. Yeah. Good luck.
Jossie had a follow up. I think I was just talking about the voltage and potential and stuff, saying you got minus 0.5 to 0.4 for a 3 electrode, and between 0 to 0.6 to 2, I'm guessing, for asymmetric with activated carbon. I think somebody's wrong. I mean, I can't speak too easily with those numbers. I mean, maybe something's wrong. I don't know. I'd have to see your data to kind of know or have any possibility of, you know, educated guess if like something's wrong or not. You know, I get if you're just doing the math, like, well, this minus this, how does it equal 2? Is my voltage too big? It's possible, you know. It's also possible in an asymmetric cell with graphite and all these things, like, you know, like you talked about the solid electrolyte interface, like the voltage that you get could be impacted by other stuff once you put your cell together, which is why, again, as I said, it's like you don't know the potential window or the voltage window. A lot of times the battery or supercapacitor voltage windows are determined experimentally because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, which is that you can't really know what voltage or potential each thing is at. You only know the overall voltage, which is the difference between the two. And so a lot of times you're just looking for the limits, like in the same way that, I know you didn't talk about this precisely, but you've answered this question. Like it's, you know, it's one of your crosses to bear, that finding the potential window. It's like sweep a little bit, sweep farther, sweep a little farther until you start getting the OER and the HER. And so in a 3 electrode system, you can find the potential window by looking for like the edges of the CV where it starts to curl up or down, or stuff starts to, you know, deviate, let's just say, right? Well, in a battery or a supercapacitor, a lot of times you actually do the same thing. It's just a voltage test. And so it can be a little bit tricky because you don't really know, like you'll either apply a current until the voltage does something, or you slowly sweep the voltage with a CV at like 0.1 millivolts a second or something really slow. And you just look for where the same things happen, right? Like you start to have some really aggressive current changes or whatever, and quickly cut it off. Don't, you know, and that can help elucidate the voltage window. You know, a lot of batteries and supercapacitors, we just have been doing, we you know, again, as like researchers, we know that like lithium iron phosphate and, you know, graphite anode in a lithium ion battery is roughly between 4.2 and like 3.1 volts. So it's like, we just know this because we've done it enough times. But like the first, you know, John Goodenough discovering the stuff in the 1980s had to like put the stuff together and just throw some current into it until he saw the voltage spike, and like, I guess that's the limit, you know, like they had to learn it the hard way. Right. So learning the hard way is fine. And if you're suspecting the voltage is too high or too wide or some crazy thing, it is possible something's wrong. And most of the time with things like this, with supercapacitors and batteries, my experience has been that it's the construction of your cell. It just making coin cells, making symmetrical cells, making, you know, cells like that. With batteries, it's not exactly the same with supercapacitors, but with batteries, you need pressure, a lot of pressure. So it's really, this is like a physical engineering problem. You have to press the anode and the cathode together very tightly. I don't know if a supercapacitor behaves exactly the same way. If it's like if it's a liquid system, maybe not, because you would short circuit, you know, each side. But if you have like a membrane and you have a closed system, kind of whatever, a lot of times pressure helps very much with achieving better results. So again, some of it might be just this construction of your cell, which is just one of these things that unfortunately the answer can be like, yeah, something is wrong, and it's just going to require practice. Like it's an arts and crafts project, you know, it's just going to take you some time to like perfect the construction of your cells and systems such that the electrochemistry that follows is like trustworthy, you know what I mean? Because you're like confident in how you build it. Like I remember in grad school, it took me, I mean, I did battery research and stuff, and it was a long time before I made batteries that the data I got from them I could trust. Like before, I was just trying to make them, and it was like half the time it would work, half the time it wouldn't work, and it was like, well, is my material good, bad, or is it just that I made a bad coin cell because it just I didn't know quite what I was doing. I didn't put enough electrolyte, or the cathode was too big for the anode, or whatever, like any of these little minor things. So don't be too discouraged, I guess, is my point. Like, just keep at it. You'll learn more as you keep making stuff. And a lot of times the construction comes along, and then you can really kind of trust your data after a bit.
Yeah. Just one last thing about that question was in thinking about the voltage difference, Jesse. My initial guess is I actually don't think something is wrong in a 3 electrode. So you have like a 0.9 volt difference for the first one in the 3 electrode cell, and then you have a 0.6 volt difference for the 2 electrode asymmetric cell. And this is, of course, in the CV, you're at these like 2 different like ranges. So I think for a single electrode, and in a 3 electrode, because you're only looking at the working electrode, you're able to fully explore the voltage range, and the current is just due to reactions happening at the working electrode. The counter electrode has to balance the charge, but the counter electrode isn't governing what the current flow is. It's not like the driving force for it. But in the 2 electrode symmetric cell, I'm not too surprised that you have a smaller voltage range, because you're now at the mercy of what other things can be happening at the other electrode, because that's going to affect your current and what the quote effective voltage range will be. That's kind of my thinking. I'm not surprised that you have a slightly smaller voltage range or potential window for the 2 electrode versus the 3 electrode, just by nature of how the experiments work. The fact that they're also very different. One is minus 0.5 to 0.4, and then one is 0 to 0.6. Well, there's a reference electrode in one case, and there's not a reference electrode in another case. So it's hard to say like where those relative things are. The 2 electrode asymmetric one also isn't like at like plus 2.0 to 2.6. It's like, okay, it is still kind of in the same like realm, if you will. So that's my thinking about the numbers that you got. It doesn't hit me as like they're wrong.
Yeah,
it's almost expected.
I think in my head I saw 2 as the voltage limit, but I think he means 2 electrode system.
Yeah. Oh, that was what
the
I was
second 2.
thinking.
So I think you're right.
2.
0 to 0.6 sounds reasonable for sure. Yeah. Now that you say that, I read 0 to 2, or like that was my head was thinking 2 volts.
0.26.
I think you're right. I think it's 3 electrode, then 2 electrode. So So that was just my misinterpretation. But yeah,
that was good.
Okay.
That was good.
Tamungna has a series of questions. I'll kind of look through this, and I think the answer is actually relatively straightforward, in my opinion. So, hi, thanks for your time. I want to ask a question related to RP, so it's polarization resistance, measurement of aluminum metal in alkaline solution. I have recorded an LSV scan at 1 millivolt per second, or 1 millivolt per Siemens, either way. And then I am making a V versus I plot with potential range of plus or minus 10 millivolts and getting RP as a slope. My question is the scan rate too fast? Probably not. But what I would say is 1 millivolt per second is probably your maximum. So as a general rule of thumb for polarization resistance measurements through scan, like sweeping potentials, you're going to want to be somewhere between 0.1 and 1 millivolt per second. So 1 millivolt per second might be the fastest you would want to go. But to your point, your follow-up statements were, I thought not. I've collected 35 plus LSV results of similar metal alloys. The VI line always comes very linear. And since the goodness of fit, which is the R squared of the VI plot, is between 0.995, 991, so very good, right? I assume my method, the scan rate is sufficient. Am I correct in thinking? I have to write in my report why it is not advisable that we measure RP with faster scan rate. Please help. Yeah, you are correct in your thinking. I mean, and the key here is twofold. It's the scan rate being relatively slow. By having, so the reasoning why you have to write about this, right? The logic behind this is that to measure the polarization resistance, what you're trying to do is get like a pure ratio of voltage and current uninhibited by mass transport or kinetic effects. You're just getting like the pure, like it's like the uncompensated resistance, really, like just the resistance of the material itself. And so the kinetics will be, I would say, heavily impacted by the speed at which you scan, and the mass transport, or I guess everything, I should say, probably will be really heavily impacted by two main factors, right? The rate at which you scan and the width of how far you scan. And so before, you said that potential range of plus or minus 10 millivolts. So that's very narrow. So that's good. If you scan really far, several hundred millivolts positively or negatively, you run the risk of encountering a Faradaic process, some other, reactions. Passivating layers can form on aluminum and things like this. You could oxidize it. You could have some other kind of reactions start to occur. In that case, your VI curves and voltage and current, measurements will be convoluted with other things and other processes. So when you start at open circuit and you just very slowly and in a very limited fashion sweep the potential like back and forth 5 or 10 millivolts, and slowly, again, somewhere between 0.1 and 1 millivolt per second, you are getting a good estimate of the polarization resistance. And this is like a very fundamental, it's called LPR is usually what it's called for linear polarization resistance. It's a fundamental measurement technique in electrochemistry, usually for correlating polarization resistance to corrosion rates. So there's a whole study there. You can correlate the RP to the rate of corrosion, but in your case, if you're just trying to get the polarization resistance for other measurements or whatever you're doing, what you've described seems perfectly reasonable, actually. You could try slowing down the scan rate if you want. You could even try doing a whole bunch of like chronoamperometry measurements. So instead of sweeping from minus 10 to 10 millivolts or whatever, you could like hold at minus 10 millivolts for a minute. That's excessive, maybe 30 seconds, whatever, right? And then pick an interval that's not going to make you crazy. You have to do like 5 billion points, but let's just say every like 1 millivolt. So hold at minus 10, hold at minus 9, hold at minus 8, and then you're going to make your IV or VI, whatever, plot with the steady state current at each of those from those chronoamperometries. That's another way to make your VI plot get the slope, and then you get another RP. So that's like a very rigorous way of doing it that you could do. And you could interpret that as like a really slow scan rate in some sense, right? That would be like 1 millivolt per 30 seconds, which is, what is that, 0.03 millivolts a second or something, whatever the number ends up being. So that's another way to interpret this. But I think you're on the right track. And I do think, hopefully I've explained a few things here. You can play this video back if you have to, or if you need me to, say it again or elucidate a little bit, I'm happy to. But I hope I've said a few things that would help you with the, as you said, writing in your report, the reasoning behind why this RP measurement is valid. Hopefully that kind of fills in some of those details for you.
Yeah. The last thing, I'll just chime in. The last kind of reason why you wouldn't want to do faster scan rates is that you'll get non-Faradaic capacitive current in your data. Even at something very slow, like 1 millivolt per second, there is a small component of the current that will be made up by non-Faradaic. So you're trying to minimize it by scanning super, super small, very slowly. And as Neil said, if you did this chronoamperometry thing and you just let it like decay for a while, you've removed that Faradaic charging component as you move. But fundamentally scanning versus stepping it's a little different in terms of what happens. So that's why I think you recommended that. But that's part of the reason.
Yeah, the capacitance is a good point. I think I said mass transport and kinetics, and I skipped capacitance. That's correct. Okay, so I think Nikhil has the next question. So how to prepare a silver chloride reference electrolyte, non-aqueous, for deposition of metals on working electrode in organic solvent. Electrodeposition of high entropy alloy. Solvent is dichloromethane acetonitrile. Does that work?
What, the solvent is DMC and acetonitrile?
DCI is dichloromethane, I assume.
So
does a silver chloride, can you deposit in non-aqueous? Does it work?
Well, this is silver plus. So
silver. I can't read.
No, it's all good.
I read CL.
Yeah,
Silver
yeah.
plus.
Silver,
All right. Yeah, you should handle this. I can't read.
Oh no, it's all good. So this
My head went silver chloride. I'm like, that's not gonna work. I don't.
that's not gonna work.
I just can't read. That's
No, it's so Nikhil, the way you would prepare it. So normally, so we sell a little kit, so you can buy one of these off of our website if you're interested in doing it. But it's just a silver wire, and what you want to do is you take the silver wire. Silver wire just by itself typically has an oxide layer on it if it's just left out over some period of time. So you want to take some yourselves with a little bit of sandpaper. You want to sand down that silver wire to remove any of the oxide, and then you'll have mostly, fresh silver. You then take that silver wire and then put it, that's been polished. Then you put it into a solution of your electrolyte, the DCM acetonitrile mixture. And then you want to add, typically you should be able to dissolve some silver nitrate into that solution. Silver nitrate should ideally be soluble. Nitrates are typically very soluble in things. So in that case, you should have nitrate ion and then silver plus. And the silver plus is going to be the redox couple to create the silver plus reference electrode. And its potential will be based on the Nernst equation. I had to wait a little bit because I knew you were going to say, you just had to mention the Nernst equation.
I'm not saying anything. Yeah. I'm just moving on. This is, as you said, we sell these at our company. This is we call this a silver pseudo. This is a standard size, which just for what it's our standard size is about 9.5 millimeter glass tube.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like 10 centimeters long, something like that.
Yeah. And we have a smaller one as well. We have
I have that pulled up as well. This one has these have replaceable frits. You can see there's like a heat shrink. You can take the frit off, heat shrink it. And it's like Vicor, but Vicor doesn't exist anymore. A lot of people know the term Vicor it was an old glass. It's discontinued. Like it was a Dow Chemical thing. I think Dow no, that's not right. Anyway, what's the other company?
Corning.
Was it Corning?
Maybe. Sometimes they merge.
Yeah, I know.
There's
Dow
Honeywell,
Corning.
There's Dow Chemical.
Who made
Corning.
Teflon? Who made Teflon?
Oh, DuPont.
DuPont. That's the name. I think it might have been DuPont. Anyway, maybe it wasn't DuPont. That name was stuck in.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is that glass frit doesn't exist anymore apparently, and so there's a new one that's called Varipor, and so that's what we use. It's basically Vicor.
Yeah.
And you can make a silver reference electrode with this, as Alex mentioned, with your silver plus, and you can have silver nitrate. You can replace the tip in the frit as needed.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's the product. We have that.
Yeah.
Silver pseudo reference electrode as well as part of our product catalog.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps. That's how you would make it.
Yeah. Tamogna says, I liked your recent video series on electrochemistry. Well, that's every video series. We're an electrochemistry company. But much appreciated. I'm just teasing. Would you be doing the same for lithium-ion battery related research anytime soon? Next year is my plan. So actually, as a point of product release that's not released yet, we are getting some we have battery software, we have a lot of these stuff that we're like publicly showing actually next week at ECS. And I'm a battery researcher, so it's my area of expertise. And I'm going to be doing a lot of webinars next year. I've had a lot of other internal company tasks that took a lot of my time this year. And I realized the other couple of weeks ago, I was like, it's been like a year since I've done a webinar. What am I doing with my life? So I will be doing a webinar on Mott Schottky next month. And then my plans are, I have RDE webinar I need to do again, an impedance webinar that I like to repeat that folks seem to like. And then I'm planning to do a battery webinar at some point. So the tricky thing I will only say to Mugna is I would love to. There's a few challenges that I'm working out the kinks. If you have any ideas, by all means, I'm very happy to hear your ideas. If you're a battery researcher or you've done lithium-ion batteries, there's two obstacles as it comes to my ability to make a good webinar. One is that I work in an office building with other people who don't want to catch on fire during their day. So I cannot really make batteries live. I'd need a glove box. I'd need some stuff. I usually, when I do webinars with stuff, I try to have a live demo component, which I'll have to do with like a coin cell or something already made. Part of the battery webinar that I wish I could do or find a way to do, which I might try to do in some ways without real material, but like making a coin cell, I would need a glove box. I would need just a lot of equipment and chemicals that I don't have, and I won't be able to do in a. I'm not in a real research lab. We're just a company in like a residential almost building, like it's just not. So that's part of it. Regretfully, I have ideas about how I can kind of do this, make like almost like a fake battery and just show how it's done, with fake lithium and things like that. But I can't use real stuff. So there's that slight hiccup. The other one, frankly, is that there's a lot that I can teach and I'm planning to do, and I'm not sure how many parts the series will end up being. But one of the benefits of things like impedance, voltammetry, RDE, things like that, is that you can set up a system with some like ruthenium hexamine or ferrocyanide and do a CV and sweep it around, and you get nice little curves, you get S curves, you get peaks, you get nice looking stuff. Battery testing is so boring and it takes a long time. So I could do a webinar where I click go on a constant current test and we just watch it for 4 hours. That doesn't sound like a good webinar. So there's a tricky part of this, just logistically, honestly, which is that showing live tests and stuff is just not really feasible because battery tests take hours, and making the batteries requires equipment. Now, again, I'm just thinking out loud, kind of for your benefit of how this will work, as I'm someone who I put a ton of time and effort into my slides, into my webinars, and I try to make them really like engaging and interesting. And I'm in the process, you would say, of brainstorming how to do that properly. Because I'm not going to do a boring webinar if I can help it, where I just talk about batteries in a very dry way. I want it to be cool and fun and kind of interesting and exciting if possible. And I'm up against those challenges. So I'm in the process of figuring out what in the world I'm going to do. So there you go. But hopefully, if I'm able to solve those hurdles, sometime next year, I'm planning to do some battery webinars. I'm planning to, and it will probably be focused mainly on lithium ion because that's my personal area of expertise. For those of you who do sodium ion or other things, I'm sorry, it's not my, I'll try to make it as general for batteries as possible, but I will certainly be focusing on lithium ion because it's what I studied and it's what I know the best. So anyway, hopefully you'll stick around sometime next year. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
This next question looks like a G question.
It does. It also isn't a question. I was reading it.
Yeah.
It's just a statement. Roman Empire just says the molar conductivity of a solution of a weak acid, call it HX at 0.01 molar, is 10 times smaller than a molar conductivity of a solution of a weak acid, HY 0.1 molar, and I don't know what lambda in this case is supposed to be. Lambda OX is approximately lambda OY. The difference in their pK values, pKa HX minus pKa HY, is consider the degree of ionization of both acids. It's not a question.
I wonder if it's
not even asked for clarification, or it's literally just a statement. So
maybe it's asking what the difference in the pKa values is.
How the difference, why the difference,
when the difference,
when the difference,
who the difference.
So
I don't. Yeah, I'm not so sure if this is like a exam question. I don't
know if we can.
I'm not so sure. We're just not this. Sometimes those questions come to our stream here, and it's a little difficult for us to push through like the just working through a test answer. It's not really our. We're more research. We're former researchers. These are not always the easiest questions to really answer. And the danger, in some real sense, is that if I could speak for me myself personally, but like a lot of times I wouldn't want to like start trying to solve it but then I've made a critical mistake and I get it wrong, and then I'm leading you astray.
Yeah.
And it's like the difference between the possibility that I might have given, like my opinion on like, oh, or PEM or SOFCs better, right? And I think PEMs perhaps are better. That's just my opinion. And I could be totally wrong, like for sure, like maybe SOFCs are amazing and they're about to take off and PEM will follow, no one will ever study PEM again. Like I could be totally wrong and that's possible. But I'm just still giving my professional opinion. And that's, hopefully that's kind of clear that we're doing our best to answer some of these questions. But like when it comes to a test, like there's a right and a wrong answer. And it's like, we might, I don't know, perhaps make a arithmetic mistake or something. And it's like, this is not really what we would prefer to try to help with. I would encourage you to find some more study resources or something like that elsewhere. We're not really equipped, I would say, to, study, comment on or really study.
I also just don't know what's
questions.
Lambda OX, Lambda OY.
Like
I haven't heard those
solution
terms before.
strength, I think.
Solution strength,
something like that.
I'm a chemist. I got pKa's and all that stuff, but I have never heard of Lambda.
There's no
OX.
pre-exponential factor. That's whatever number you want it to be as an engineer. So I'm confused.
Okay, sorry, we can't help you.
Yeah,
we have failed. Roman Empire.
We have. That's correct.
Sorry,
but the Roman Empire already fell, so I think we're okay.
I think we're okay.
Yeah. So let's move on.
Yukta asked, I think, remember you asked this question last time, and we didn't have time for it. So thanks for asking it again and reminding us. What are limitations of the Nernst equation? So, I'll put this up front. I don't know, what all the limitations are or the limits, but, in thinking about this question, the Nernst equation. So one thing that's very interesting is the Nernst equation pops out of a lot of expressions in electrochemistry. It is a system. It does apply only to systems that are at equilibrium. So if a system's not at equilibrium, the Nernst equation does not apply. The system will try to reach equilibrium, but and if the kinetics of a particular electron transfer are very slow, we would call it non-Nernstian. So under those types of conditions, the Nernst equation would not work. It would not apply. If like your rate constant was super slow, you couldn't relate your results to the Nernst equation unless you gave it a lot of time to reach equilibrium. The Nernst equation doesn't say anything about pressure. There's no pressure component in the Nernst equation. It does take into account activity. So you may ask, are there concentration ranges where it starts to break down? But if you take the Nernst equation as a function of the activity, even when you go to absurdly high or absurdly low concentrations beyond a normal range, you may say that, no, it's you'll still just be dealing with the activity of the species. The Nernst equation is oftentimes talked about and understood for ions, and I've always thought of ions being able to freely diffuse in solution, but I think people also apply it for solid state systems as well, where you have a solid ionic conductor, and that's something that I believe the Nernst equation still applies to, but it's just something I haven't seen or observed. So, so I'm trying to think. Really, the Nernst equation doesn't say anything about pressure, and maybe activity takes that into account. And it isn't a system that's it has to be at equilibrium. Otherwise, the Nernst equation does not apply. So that's, in my opinion, and I don't know this for sure, those are the things, as somebody who thinks about the Nernst equation a lot, these are the things that come to mind when I think about like limitations of the Nernst equation. When does the Nernst equation not apply? There will be errors in certain, when you're making certain electrochemical experiments, instrument errors, things like that. But my view is that the Nernst equation's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid equation. It derives itself out of numerous instances in electrochemistry. Like Barden Faulkner has like probably half a dozen different derivations of the Nernst equation from Marcus theory or Butler-Volmer not Marcus theory, Butler-Volmer kinetics, gets back to the Nernst equation under like fast electron transfer rates and stuff like that. So, I hope this is helpful. The truth is, I don't know all of them off the top of my head from like a textbook, but those are some thoughts when I think about the limits of the Nernst equation. Hopefully that's helpful.
The real answer is that the Nernst equation is perfect and there are no limitations and it is beautiful.
It is a beautiful equation.
Beautiful and perfect.
It's a beautiful and perfect equation from my perspective.
That's right. We've talked about the Nernst equation a lot in the last 20 minutes. So
yeah,
this has been a good day.
It's a little bit too much.
No, it's been a good day.
It's been a good day.
I'm not even gonna denigrate the Nernst equation right now. I'm just gonna be very grateful. So Tamogna clarified that you're doing RP to estimate corrosion rate at plus or minus 10 millivolts to E core. So this all sounds good. I think you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Jesse had a question. I asked a follow up. I haven't seen any reply yet. I'm not 100% sure how to answer this because I guess I don't understand the system or the context. For liquid electrolytes, what Celgard or other materials should you use to contain the electrolyte to keep it from flowing? I tried Celgard 2500 and the surface tension was too high. It's viscous. I don't really understand. Celgard's usually used as a separator for batteries. And I just don't understand what you mean by to keep it from flowing. I don't really understand it. It's like, is there some, I don't think I know what that means, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, are you talking about a flow cell and you're trying to separate the flow cell and you're saying the electrolyte's too viscous for the Celgard or something? I guess I don't understand the system. I think I don't understand the context. So
when he says flowing, does he mean like it's going through, like
maybe
through the Celgard?
Yeah,
that's not separating it properly.
That could be. Yeah, maybe the surface tension was too high.
But surface tension being high makes it sound like
it won't flow.
It won't flow.
So I guess So that's these are a lot of questions. Is it a battery and you're worried that it's crossing over the membrane too fast or not enough? I use Celgard 20 something, 2200, 2230, 2320, something like that when I was doing lithium-ion batteries, and it worked well for carbonate electrolytes like DMC. It's a pouch cell, and I'm sandwiching two lithium metals, and the electrolyte is leaking out. Well, are you sure the electrolyte is leaking out because of the Celgard? Because pouch cells are notoriously difficult to seal. I'm not convinced that would be because of the Celgard, unless you're wrapping the whole thing in it, maybe like to insulate it or something like that. But if you're using a pouch cell, I'm not sure Celgard is the material that's used as like a wrap around the whole thing to keep it contained in electrolyte. I tried the Celgard to keep the electrolyte. Yeah, I don't know that that's going to work. I feel like it's almost as silly as something like just like a plastic, almost like a plastic bag or a plastic lining inside of a pouch cell. I've never made a pouch cell, to be honest. I've worked with 18650s, so like cylindrical cells and coin cells. I've never worked with Celgard isn't soaking. Well, so that should be good, right? I mean, if it's not soaking the electrolyte, then it in theory would be repelling it and keeping it inside, but you're saying it's still leaking. So you could perhaps have a sealing problem. Celgard is very it's not Teflon, but it has a feel like Teflon. It's usually white and it's kind of slippery. So it might just be difficult to like wrap it around and seal it. A pouch cell, has some three-dimensional geometry and geography. Yeah, it could be the size of a continent.
That's
right. So getting the Celgard wrapped around, and if it bunches somewhere, maybe you're getting a micro puncture, or maybe it's getting a hole and it's leaking somewhere. I just don't know that Celgard is the right answer for that. And I don't have the best insight as far as what you would use otherwise, but Celgard is used as the separator, in batteries, which means It's no longer leaking with Celgard, but since it's not soaking, the ions are moving. My resistance was 1 million ohms.
Oh, wow.
That's way too high. Yeah, I don't think Celgard is the right answer for that. Like, whether it's leaking or not leaking, whether it's soaking or not soaking, like Celgard's a separator, which means it should permit the transport of ions through it, and it should absorb in some capacity electrolyte or whatever. And it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if you're wrapping the whole battery with Celgard as a means to like contain it, that it would leak or you'd have problems because you might have diffusional transport out of the battery itself of electrolyte, of lithium ions. You probably want to use something less permeable, more, which I don't know. Again, this is where my ignorance of pouch cells comes in. I've never made one, so I don't know. But I imagine there must be some kind of plastic liner or something. Like prismatic cells or pouch cells, usually they have some sort of architecture. Sometimes it's like a almost looks like a metal bag. It's probably not exactly, maybe it is metal, I don't know, maybe it's like aluminum or something like that. But obviously it can't be metal all the way inside or it would short circuit the whole battery. So it's like I feel like it must have some kind of lining inside. And my point is that probably that lining shouldn't be Celgard, because if it's the membrane, well, the membrane fundamentally is going to will potentially, transfer ions through it. And it's like, you don't want to transfer ions outside of the battery itself. So you probably need some other plastic that's going to like polypropylene maybe would be, I don't know. I know polypropylene is part of Celgard, but I'm just thinking out loud, like some polymer that's going to be like very, hydrophobic for, if it's not, maybe hydrophobic is the wrong word because it's not water, but very repellent and pushing in and keeping in of your whole system, of all your electrolyte, the whole thing. Something like that. That's my guess. My intuition tells me, again, with not having made a pouch cell myself, but my intuition tells me that Celgard's probably not the best choice for wrapping the whole thing. It's the separator between the two, anode and cathode. So that's my guess. But other than that, I don't know that I can speak more clearly. I don't have more specific information. You wouldn't put Celgard around in a coin cell. You wouldn't put Celgard wrapped around the jelly roll in an 18650. You would never do that. So maybe that's kind of the answer for a pouch cell. You shouldn't be using Celgard for that purpose. That's my guess.
Yeah, I made a fake pouch cell, but it was really an arts and crafts project.
Yes.
I wouldn't even call it a.
This is where my webinar is going to go. I'm going to have to do a fake arts and crafts project. I'm really going to think about this because I need like a fake metal I can pretend is lithium.
I can hook you up with the guy who I can probably get some of his information, because he used completely like the battery didn't work, but the making of it was like the process, and he used a lot of like fake completely inert chemicals to do it, but it was very similar to the process of like actually making a battery. But yeah, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, when we made the pouch cell, you had like one side and the other side, you had your separator, you had your ink, and you had the little two guys here, and then you sealed around it. And of course I sealed it in like a plastic bag, and you use some hot like frying.
Is it like those curlers that women use for their hair?
I think that's exactly what we used.
Like, and I don't know how they don't burn themselves constantly.
Yeah,
I would burn every bit of my head and fingers.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know, what's that for? Is that straighten?
I think it's
hair?
It's
a straightener.
I
think so.
Right? Like, man,
it's like a big pair of scissors that's flat that heats.
Yeah, I know. We are the absolute wrong people
for sure
to be like
which is why we're talking about it.
Yeah, which is why we're talking about it. It's like
it's not.
I want to say it straightens hair, but it could also curl hair, and I could.
It could be. It either straightens hair or does the exact opposite of that. But it's either way.
But here's the thing, because when you comb hair, you take frizzly hair and you comb it to make it straight. So then why on earth would someone use a hot thing to also make your hair straight when you can comb it?
But does heat make it straighter?
Does heat make it straighter, or does heat make it curlier? Because there's no anti-comb that curls.
How do you know?
Straight hair.
Have you ever used an anti-comb?
I have not used an anti-comb.
Then you don't know it doesn't exist.
I guess that is true.
You don't know. That's what I'm saying.
So you're saying
there's a whole world of hair straightening, curling products out there next
Yeah.
week, ask us anything about hair curling.
Hair curling.
That's what this will be. Until then,
Still won't know the answers.
I don't know. I don't know the answers.
Sorry,
So,
Jesse.
Yeah, sorry, Jesse. I know you said you're using it as a
Yeah.
separator. I think that's my point, is that it is a separator, and it probably shouldn't also be used as the insulator for your whole thing. So a separator is right.
He's using it for both.
That's what it seems like. You shouldn't use the separator as the insulator as well. It doesn't seem like it should work that way.
Yeah.
It's the separator between
the
anode and the cathode, which in your case, it's two lithium metals. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a separator. So it's electrically isolating.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
But one of the things that it does is it's ionically conducting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if it's around the outside of your battery, I'm not surprised it might leak, because it's ionically conducting, which means it moves liquid around.
Yeah.
And ions. So it's going to just, like, if lithium ions get near the outside and they see Celgard, they're going to be like, oh, cool, I'm going to jump in the Celgard and go out that way.
I can go in Celgard. No
Why
problem.
not?
Yeah.
So yeah, you probably shouldn't use it as the insulator.
Based on your description.
Yeah.
So
it's a separator. It's a membrane. Okay, let's move on.
Yes.
So anyway, I hope that's kind of clear, Jesse. Good luck to you. But I hope I've kind of made my point clear. But until then, Shandon has the next set of questions.
He says, hi, I'm doing oxygen evolution on some electrocatalysts. When I am performing LSV, I'm getting a positive current before onset potential, before 1.23 volts versus RHE. Why is this happening? How can I avoid it to report in a journal? Hold on. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you want it to be? Isn't the sign of a good catalyst to be the fact that you are getting potentials earlier than the onset potential? Like you have a less pot. You're getting oxygen evolution before 1.23. Isn't that supposed to be a good thing?
You would think so, yes.
You'd think so, but that's the problem. Yeah, that's what he's describing.
This doesn't sound like a problem. This sounds like you have an amazing
this sounds like you have a catalyst. That's great.
Or
you should get the Nobel Prize. Just came out for MOV chemistry.
Exactly.
Bro, what are you waiting for?
Or you've made like an arithmetic calculation error and you didn't, you subtracted a potential and you should have added or something like that. Check that your potential versus RHE is calculated correctly. But so there's two follow-ups that I would say. So for instance, if what you're seeing, for instance, is something, I'll draw very, very quickly here. If you have your CV and this is 1.23, and your CV is like this, just very simply, right? And it's like, oh, it's ticking up like at a little before, right? Or if you're seeing something like, and there's some other redox, some other entirely different process occurring, that's a different story, right? Like you might have like a different redox process occurring here that has nothing to do. But if you're just saying like, oh, well, I'm just getting an uptick in the current for oxygen evolution, and it's like a little bit before 1.23, then one of two things is potentially happening here, I guess, is that you've made just a big check your calculations to make sure that what you think is 1.23 is I didn't account for pH changes, or I didn't account for my reference electrode, and it's actually 1.4. So it's like, oh, it's like there's a 100 millivolt overpotential. It's still pretty good, but it's this or that. Okay, fine. Otherwise, if it's just happening, you might just have a really good electrocatalyst, like you said. That's not a problem, right? You might have a very low overpotential or none, and you have a tremendous catalyst that's really doing a good job. That could be it. So, also, Chris, this is very important. Chris says, given sufficient voltage, electricity will both curl and straighten. That doesn't make any sense, Chris. You can't curl and straighten hair. That's like saying I'm a married bachelor. It's a contradiction in terms, my friend. You can't both have straight and curly hair. Okay? You don't think. You got to think. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? I'm not here for your logical inconsistencies. Jeez Louise.
That's a good one.
Plus, I might try to electrocute my hair later and see if you're right.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how it goes. I might
See
have
if
a
it
tick.
starts
I
going
might
up
be.
and curless.
If I electrocute myself, it's just in the name of science.
Let's see. Alex Jeffin says, hi, in my impedance Nyquist plot, a part of the semicircle starts in the negative region, ZRE. Are there any important things to consider before doing EIS for electrocatalysis for ORR, OER? Thanks. Usually when you start doing EIS and you get like negative real impedance, I think we've always generally associated this with like an artifact.
It's the reference electrode.
Like a reference electrode artifact that is just like shifted everything over. I would, to a degree, you can demonstrate or test this by using actually just a silver wire. Just instead of a reference electrode with a frit, use a silver wire or platinum wire as the reference electrode, just kind of as a test, and see if it shifts it over, because there tends to be an impedance in I guess like the glass tube of the reference electrode, and that acts like a capacitor, and has this effect. It has many effects, but one of them is that it can shift the potential to negative real impedance, which doesn't seem to make much sense given the system that you're working with. So I would consider or think about that with regards to your Nyquist plot for doing EIS of catalyst or OER. Did you want to?
I'm trying to find. I have some shunt data.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can use
test
something
it
called
with
a reference electrode shunt too. That might also
How
help.
else might have it in a? I'm trying to find. I have some slides on this. I want to see if I can show. This would be. It's one of my advanced somethings.
And we have a YouTube video on it as well.
We
do have one on reference electrode shunts.
See if I can find the slides, and I think I have the data in the slides. I'm trying to find the raw data, but I'm not sure which data set it's in exactly. So here's the shunt. Oh, that's how a shunt works. I don't have the data in that one.
Oh, okay.
Where did I do it? I did it somewhere. I talked about how a shunt works, and I showed the data. Maybe it's in here. Give me a second. Talk if you want to answer someone. Question? I'm looking for. Sure. I'll try to find it. I know I can find it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going. Subathra is asking, can you give an overview of RD and RRDE? Electrode
for that too. Actually.
So, yeah, I have slides. I can give a brief overview, if you will. I do think for the full thing, there's a webinar on our YouTube channel for our tier 2 members that goes into full detail on RRDE, Kuteki-Levitch actually doing like full on analysis. But let me actually find. I guess I have slides. I'll just draw it. It's easy enough to draw RDE stuff. So. Sorry. So in general, brief overview of rotating disc electrodes. So hold on. I don't have to draw anything. I can just make a circle here. So typically you may have a let's say you have some kind of glassy carbon electrode. You'll also have a kind of a shroud material as well. And this will go back. And so then you have this. It's white. It's got a let's give it a black line. And oops. And let's just make it a little thicker. And then oops, why'd that clip go there? And then you'll have so let's say this is the electrode. All right, so this is the electrode. All right, so I have a GC electrode here. Oh, we shouldn't use black. You have a glassy carbon electrode here. So this is GC. And then this is some kind of inert material. It can be PTFE. PEEK is often used, so inert material. And the idea with a rotating disc electrode is that as you have analyte in your solution, as you rotate the electrode around, this is connected to a motor, it causes convection of molecules towards the electrode surface. And under very precise rotation control, the molecules appear to come on a what's called laminar flow, which is where the kind of the flow or the velocity vectors of the molecules in solution move towards this electrode surface. But as they move towards the electrode surface, the speed of those molecules tends to slow down. There's almost like an air resistance, if you will, solution resistance, physical solution resistance. So the molecules then become very slow as they get to the electrode surface. And then once it's at the electrode surface, if you're applying a potential, you'll be able to oxidize or reduce those molecules there. Now, the nice thing about a rotating disc electrode versus a stationary electrode, for example, is that in a stationary electrode, you end up getting this diffusion layer. And any of the, reduced species, get oxidized and they just kind of stick around. They're near the electrode surface. And you got to move much further away from the electrode for new molecules to get close to the electrode. But when you rotate the electrode, you're kind of overcoming this diffusion layer thickness. In fact, you're actually able to control the diffusion layer thickness as a function of the rotation rate. This is something that you cannot do in a stationary electrode configuration. So this allows for a lot of scientists figured out stuff a long time ago. They were able to create what's known as the Levitch equation and the Kurecki-Levitch equation, which describes, much like any cyclic voltammogram, you end up getting these S-shaped voltammograms where the limiting current, let's just say this is 0, and this is the limiting current. The limiting current is equal to this entire expression. And from this, you could change things like the rotation rate to calculate things like the diffusion coefficient, the kinematic viscosity, based on, certain, other parameters that are mostly constant. But this ended up becoming a very powerful electroanalytical chemistry technique because it allowed you to overcome mass transport. And there are other things where you could put, say, a concentric ring around the electrode. I should use something that's not blue. Let's use green.
I have a cool animation showing the RRDE if you want.
Oh yeah, that spins. I can just stop my screen if you want to throw it up.
Well, if you're talking about RDE still and stuff, I have a cool animation.
Oh yeah,
that shows the ring disc.
Go for it
if you want.
Throw it up there.
Yeah. Let me get the thing. Yeah. Sorry, because I was distracted. I found some stuff on shunts, and that I'll get back to that question in a minute. But let me just piggyback on what you were showing about the RDE mechanism, and this is ring discs for RRDE. So this for example is what you were just drawing with the ring and the disc. It's related to the concept of collection efficiency, but basically I'll just describe how the rotating ring disc works, right? So I think you were talking about how you have a disc and you're spinning it, and so you're sending stuff towards the surface to react. So in this case, right, I'm spinning the electrode and I have some stuff flowing towards the surface. So these blue dots are just, well, they're water molecules. They're also reagents, whatever, right? Something that can presumably oxidize or reduce. And so by spinning the disc and the electrode, they fly towards the surface and they get sent out radially, basically, right? Now, consider at the surface, any of these dots that are there at the electrode, the disc surface, the black surface here, right? I can apply a negative potential, for instance, and that will cause the blue species A to reduce to a pink species, whatever this is. So this is just some reduction reaction, right? So when that hits the electrode surface, that's what will happen. And then what I can do is I have this ring electrode. This is the RRD, the second R in RRDE, right? Ring disc electrode. So I can bias my ring at a positive potential. And so what will happen is that as the pink dot goes across the ring has a positive potential. It will put it back to blue. So you would ask yourself, what's the point of this, right? Well, because I'm just taking the blue, turning it to pink, and then when it goes over the ring, it goes back to pink. But this is a way for me to check whether a reaction is happening, right? Because in some cases, for instance, the blue can go to pink or it can go to some other color, and only the pink will be detectable at the ring at a certain potential. So it's like I can collect how much of my thing is happening. But the other part of this that's just hydrodynamically possible is the pink dot could go off at that angle. Well, if it goes off at that angle, it won't hit the ring. That's why we have this concept of collection efficiency. And I'm not going to get into that anymore. That was just an animation showing how the thing happens. But that's ring disc electrode, is that I'm making something happen at the disc and then it gets swept out towards the ring. And then when it hits the ring, you can do more electrochemistry on it to detect something. So anyway, I just had that cool animation. I thought I'd throw it in.
Yeah, that's I would say that's like a good, just brief overview of RDE, RRDE. We have full webinars and YouTube videos on doing that, actually determining things like diffusion coefficients from a rotating disc electrode. So yeah, I would check some of those out there on our YouTube channel.
And let me jump back really quick to
Alex.
To Alex's question. So so about the negative, I have this this data here. For instance, I have a data set of I can't remember what the system was, to be honest, but you can see here, this is starting in negative Z real, right? So there you go. It's like, oh, this is a mess. Wow, it looks normal. It looks like a good impedance set, but the leftmost part of the Nyquist plot starts at minus 100 whatever ohms. So what I did was I applied what's called a shunt with, let's just say, 100 picofarads, and I was able to get this result. So you see similar shape, but now it's at 100 whatever. And so if I look at the comparison, shunt, there it is. The black one is the negative Z real. When I added a shunt, you get this. Okay. Now what's so anyway, the first part to mention is as Alex, you, my colleague, noted, is that this is related to the reference electrode most commonly, and it is not. What should I do? Well, part of it is either start at a lower frequency. Your high frequency results will be highly impacted by this kind of artifact, this kind of error. Okay. The other is that you can use a shunt. Now, a shunt, what is a shunt? I think I have it here. So I'll show you those slides. I was part of a video as well, but I'll go through these slides very. Whoops. Trying to find my screen again here. And I'll share this explanation of how a shunt works. Okay, so what we have is electrochemical system. Okay, we have electrolyte counterworking a reference electrode, right? We do our impedance, we get these results. So what we can do is add a shunt. So what we're going to do is we add a platinum wire and a capacitor. Now, 100 picofarads is just an example. Usually finding the exact capacitor is trial and error. Okay, and we connect those in parallel to the reference electrode, potentiostat wire. Now, what happens when we do something like impedance is this, okay? Typically, the reference electrode impedance is somewhere between 100 and 10 kilo ohms, 100 ohms and 10 kilo ohms, something like that, 10 to the 2, 10 to the 4, okay? That's typically what the impedance is of your reference electrode because of the frit, because of just its construction, okay? However, the impedance of my shunt part depends on frequency, because it's basically, the platinum wire has basically no impedance. It's a wire. It's like milliohms at most, right? But the capacitor, the impedance of a capacitor is inversely related to frequency. So what this means is that if I'm making a 1 megahertz measurement, 1 megahertz across a 100 picofarad capacitor has about 1.6 kilo ohms of impedance. As I drop the frequency, its impedance goes up, let's say by a factor of 10, it goes up by a factor of 10, 16 kilo ohms. So what does this mean? It means when I'm doing impedance, a measurement, the potentiostat uses the path of least resistance or least impedance. So at high frequency, like a megahertz, 1.6 kilo ohms of impedance across this capacitor is less than, let's just say, 10 to the 4, right? It's less than 10 kilo ohms. So the potentiostat is going to not measure my reference electrode. Now, you could think this is bad, perhaps, but the reality is that the reference electrode at high frequency is causing problems. So I'm bypassing those problems. I'm getting rid of those problems. I got 99 problems, but a reference ain't one. How do you like that? So
I do like that, but
that's
reference electrode is always a problem.
That's true. That's true. But what I've done here is take it out briefly at certain frequencies. So then as the frequency drops, 100 kilohertz here in this example, then the impedance of my shunt of my capacitor goes to 16 kilohertz. That's greater than 1 or 10 kilohertz. So I start measuring through my reference electrode. So what it does is it allows me to remove the reference electrode's high frequency issues over a narrow range. And that depends on the capacitor choice you use and everything like that. Now, why, to the last part of this, why is that artifact occur? It actually occurs because, I guess we'll just sort of restate this and then won't take too much more time because I see there's some other questions. But there is what's called a glass capacitance to the point that you made, basically. And so you wouldn't think about glass as being a capacitor. Like a capacitor is two oppositely charged plates separated by a dielectric material. Glass is a very, very poor dielectric material, but it does have a dielectric constant. And so technically electrolyte on both sides of a thin wall of glass can operate like a capacitor. Okay. Now, when your potentiostat is using a reference electrode, it is sensing the potential through the wire of the reference electrode down through the silver and silver chloride or the mercury or whatever it is. And then that communication to your electrolyte and your working electrode and everything goes through the frit, the frit at the bottom of the reference electrode. That's the main pathway. And part of the issue with why high frequencies are a problem is because there's impedance associated with that. The frit has impedance. It has a kilo ohm of impedance or whatever amount of impedance it has. That slows things down. It's like the added impedance slows down the response time. And so what we can have happen in some situations is that technically, astonishingly enough, the impedance of the capacitance, which is like barely a capacitor, through the glass wall of the reference electrode is smaller than the impedance. And so it's like making its own shunt. But if you think about it, it's still a piece of glass. It's actually a glass wall, the body of the reference electrode. So there isn't really any communication. So two things are happening. The impedance through the glass wall of the reference electrode is lower than the impedance through the frit. So the potentiostat is trying to read the reference through the glass wall of the body of the reference electrode. And the second thing that happens is that that's a terrible way to read the reference. And so it fails, or the results are meaningless or weird. And this is what we just call artifact. Now, it manifests itself in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes it leads to a weird negative curl tail. Sometimes it leads to a negative Z real. Sometimes it leads to noise. It varies. It's all over the place as to what you get. But that's mainly the reason why you get that. So hopefully that kind of explains that phenomenon. But don't take any stock in that being a real phenomenon, basically, is the point. Negative Z real doesn't really mean anything. So, okay. I think we've got through that. I tried to get that through that quickly. I know there's a lot of questions.
I think that was good. Santiago is next. Santiago has a big thing. Hi, it is about EIS. In CV, the material has a redox pair at 0.4 volts, which only appears if I have a window from negative 0.1 to 0.8. If I want to perform EIS for the process at 0.4, I must apply a single voltage at 0.4 and then measure OCP until the system stabilizes before performing EIS. If that is correct, how is it possible to measure the redox process if I'm not applying the window that promotes the redox pair? I feel like this is your I feel like this is your trigger question.
Why are you doing this to me?
Why are you doing this? Do you want to get on the soapbox or should I get on the soapbox?
I think you should get on the
I can go on the soapbox.
I just talked for a while, and,
Yeah.
and I'm not capable of doing this without fuming, apparently.
So Santiago, don't worry. Neil's not angry at you. So what you want to do in this kind of process is in EIS, in the parameters, you should be able to set what's called an EIS baseline. So Santiago, your thinking is actually completely on point. Why exactly would I want to, like, do I have to apply 0.4 volts and then go to OCP and then try and make sure that it's stable or something like that? It's like, no. If you hold the potential at 0.4 volts and do EIS around 0.4 volts, that's the potential where the redox process is occurring. So, so the process is not to like go to 0.4 volts and then OCP and then do EIS. The process is go to 0.4 volts, set that as the EIS baseline, and then do your, make your sine wave around 0.4 volts. Because as you accurately mentioned, that is where the redox process is occurring. That is where you should be doing EIS about. If you do it at OCP, where no process is occurring, the results of your EIS spectrum will not reflect that of the redox process that you're trying to study. That's it. That's it. Just hopefully that makes sense. And we only have 10 minutes, and like a couple of questions just came in, so I think we can try to get there. But hopefully, Santiago, that makes sense, and your potential that has the ability to do that. You just set the EIS baseline at the potential, or you can even set it a little bit lower. It doesn't have to be exactly at 0.4. It can be close to it. You'll actually get different sized semicircles when you do that. So something to look at. Okay.
All right. So
Shajil has a question, but I don't think we can. I mean, I think you know more about
I can
this
talk
than
about
that.
it a little
You can
bit,
talk
but I
about it
can't
a little
exactly answer. Yeah. So Shajil is asking, can you please enlighten us on the distribution of relaxation times DRT analysis from EIS plots, how it's being done? DRT analysis is a straight mathematical recasting, if you will, of impedance data. I'll just talk about it for like 30 to 60 seconds. How it's done, I can't answer that for you. It's math. It's mathematics. In fact, I actually, the math is a little crazy to me, and I'm not 100% sure even how to do it. I could do the math out for like circuit fit. I've done the math out for circuit. I've written code to do Kramer's Kronig. I know how to do that. I actually can't quite figure out DRT. It's weird to me. Like there's like it's an integral over a range of frequencies, and you do some mathematics, and you get this modulus versus frequency or something like that. So I don't know how to answer that precisely. What I can say, very generally speaking, is that it is a good way to deconvolute impedance data where you have the suspicion of multiple processes occurring, but the time constants are relatively close and similar, such that, for example, on your Nyquist plot, you might have like what looks like one semicircle, but it actually is like 2 or 3, but they're all meshed together because their time constants are similar. DRT could help elucidate. You'll get 3 peaks, which indicates 3 time constants. And so it can inform, well, I should pick 3 RCs or 3 Randall's circuits or whatever, like for your circuit fit to describe your process. It's telling you generally how many processes. The last thing I'll say is that there are absolutely limitations to this method and mathematical procedure. It is purely mathematical. It is not, there's not a lot of the theory behind it. It's not in some cases, I would say, as ironclad as some other forms of analysis where you're trying to like really connect with reality, some process that's happening, connecting whatever. DRT is really kind of a mathematical transform that presupposes some mathematical solution to your impedance data and then just casts it that way. Your presupposition could be incorrect, and so your data could be wrong. And one of the ways that it can be wrong is if you have a lot of capacitive behavior in your impedance data. DRT is inapplicable. The quick way to look at that is if your y-axis on your Nyquist plot has really high points or low points, very inductive, but that doesn't happen too often. If the z imaginary axis is very, very high, there's a, compared to the z real axis, you should not do DRT. It's fundamentally incompatible. It requires relatively minimal capacitive interference or processes, and so sometimes people misuse it over frequency ranges where there's a lot of capacitive information, and you'll just get, your data doesn't mean anything. You might get like 15 different peaks in your DRT analysis, and it doesn't mean a darn thing. So those are just a few bits and pieces I can kind of talk about it, but we'll try to move on for now. And again, the main crux of it is how it's done. It's mathematics, and I actually don't know. I've tried to figure it out. It's a little beyond my comprehension as far as like coding. Like, do I multiply the z real axis by 50 and then take the derivative of this? And it's a bit crazy to me. I'm not exactly sure how to calculate it. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I need to learn more about it too.
Yeah, once it's becoming more and more popular, so it's something that more folks are asking about. I can see how it's something that all of us might need to learn more about and discuss more about, for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
time for a few more questions. Constance has a question. What to look for in EIS data to level up your discussion section if you're comparing different materials? So I would say, so I guess one question is the EIS data, does it actually require two different circuit fits? That's a big one, I would say. If you're comparing two different materials and it turns out that like the EIS looks visually very different, like, oh, I have another semicircle, that means the equivalent circuit model is different. But then the other thing is, if they are the same, if it's like you've changed the material a little bit, and the EIS shape and its equivalent circuit are the same, then the thing that you would be looking for are what are the values of the different things. Like, is the charge transfer resistance different for one material versus another material? And that allows you to talk about or discuss, say, the differences in the kinetics and the electron transfer for a particular material, or the capacitance value. So, sometimes there is something obviously different in the Nyquist plot for an EIS spectrum, that it's like one has a lot more resistance than the other one, hence it's better or worse. But I think it's from the circuit fit and the data, the quantitative data you get from that circuit fit, that helps you say things like, oh, this guy has has other electron transfer processes occurring because it fits a circuit. It has a better circuit fit based on some other things. You may even say that EIS supports a hypothesis about a certain mechanism because you got a better fit when you modeled it with 2 or 3 parallel RC circuits instead of, series RC circuits, stuff like that. That's my thought about leveling up your discussion section. The data is just the data. So, and without knowing anything else, that's how I would approach it. I don't know if you have any other things.
I'm trying to think of like general answers, to this. It's like circuit fit, obviously, like you said, is a good general answer. Like, look at the circuit fitting data and use that to infer about why one material is better than the other in certain context. I mean, if you're I'm just like leveling up, like trying to have like some really like cool ideas of things you could like look for or write about, right? I understand that point. You're trying to like, set yourself apart in your discussion and your analysis. There's certain things you can do that people do, which are, I understand. I also have some questions about. For example, like you can look at the shape of the Nyquist plots and like draw some conclusions about like comparing just how they look or whatever, and thinking like, well, if the shape is this way, it may mean this way, X, Y, or Z. I'm being very vague because I know some of this is like, and part of the reason too is that like I'm dubious of that sometimes, because like, is that really a difference between materials, or is that just happenstance? Because impedance data can be difficult to reproduce. It's like if you did it again, do you get the same depressed looking peak? And that actually means it's less ideal and there's more heterogeneity in the surface structure. And, there's some thought to drawing conclusions like that. But yeah, I don't know, like CPEs having different alpha values describes the surface roughness or heterogeneity, or the ideality, how ideal of a material it's behaving. There's other things you can do, like, through different impedance. Like I have a whole webinar where I talked about getting tortuosity from impedance measurements. That describes like a bit of the microstructure of materials. So you could like compare two different materials in that way. That's one just other example. Yeah, I don't know. These are just some general thoughts. I don't know. Maybe some of these are helpful. Maybe not for your specific material. I don't know how much more I want to ramble on about it, but I like the way you're thinking, because it is good to like think through, how do I set myself apart? How do I take my analysis to like a better, more intelligent level? Really take my analysis to more than just a very baseline understanding. I think you're on the right track, even if maybe we didn't provide too much specific examples. I think you're doing a good service to yourself by thinking along that line, if that, for what it's worth, I guess. So, should we be calling? There's a couple other questions. Chandan had just clarified about getting rid of those currents, so they're background currents. Maybe, I don't know if there's much you can do about that.
The other thing, I mean, we can talk a little bit about Chandan's question, because and this will probably be the last question. I don't think there's any more after this. But I mean, his argument is that if you're getting 10 milliamp, if you're getting an onset potential that's 200 millivolts less than the standard equilibrium potential for OER, then you have a catalyst that has a negative overpotential, or it's a quote efficient catalyst, which ideally it's like that's something that you want. So there's a part of me that says, okay, if you're worried about this result and you want to double check it, I would take out your catalyst, and I would try it with, say, like glassy carbon, and I also try it with something like platinum. I would benchmark your work against other known things that, like,
do a good job or a bad job, that
very confidently, like, hey, platinum's like the best catalyst, and it works on and it should always give me this value. And if it's giving me a value that's 200 millivolts shifted, then you could have a reference electrode problem, where the reference electrode is actually shifted by some amount, because capacitive current by itself shouldn't result. And that brings up the other point. You should be scanning very slowly, right? So you should be scanning the potential slowly for an LSV experiment. Really, like,
also check your pH.
Yeah, check the pH.
Standard potentials technically can shift. I mean, the number by the Nernst equation is 60, 59, whatever the number is, but it's about 60. It's about minus 60 millivolts per pH unit, which means if you go up in pH, the potential for a thing will shift negatively. So if you're in alkaline systems, like you're talking about 200, let's just say 240 millivolts, that's 4 pH units. Did you change by 4 pH units? That could explain the shifted potential. Just saying.
Yeah. So that's my thought. If you're getting something that's like super efficient and you're dubious about getting this result, I would just benchmark it against other well-characterized things.
And the other part of this is that he's just saying, well, if there's other current, like capacitive or redox, is contributing to this current density, how can you avoid these currents? I don't think you can. The best you could do is background subtract or correct against them, such that what you say is 10 milliamps is actually like 0, because you've subtracted a background, and then you'll have to do a correction after the fact. But if you're getting that much current on your catalyst, it means some process is contributing to the current. And assuming everything we just said is checked and taken care of, like you did benchmark it, and you did do slow, and you checked pH, and your current actually is really still 10 milliamps per centimeter squared at this 1 volt.
Mhm.
And you're like still kind of baffled as to why your catalyst is so good. And you refuse to accept that you should take your Nobel Peace Prize and
Yeah.
go away. No. But right. So let's say that that's all the case still. Then if your catalyst is doing something that's drawing current at those potentials, then there probably isn't anything you can do other than changing your catalyst or changing your electrolyte. Like if there's something about your system, there's something that it catalyzes, or the background current is high because your scan rate's too big, like something, right? Like is causing current to pass. All you can really do is, if you think it's warranted, is find a background current and subtract it afterwards, like subtract the current axis values or something, and correct for a baseline of something like that. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any way to get rid of it. Like if it's happening fundamentally, electrochemically, then it's going to happen. You can't stop it from happening.
Yeah. The only thing is if your electrolyte, literally, the only other thing I can think of is if your if the electrolyte that you've picked actually turns out like your catalyst is electroactive for converting it into something.
Oh, that's who. Yeah.
Right. That is super rare. Most of the time, these supporting electrolytes are fairly inert. But if you have a really interesting catalyst, it could also be adding that extra component to the total.
Yeah,
current.
and if that's the case, honestly, it's like your ability to get true OER data is going to be convoluted. It's going to be almost impossible.
Yeah.
Because if you're getting electrocatalysis in any way, shape, or form, you either need to change electrolyte or change catalyst. Because
it's like you got chlorine gas or not chlorine gas, because that would be a reduction, or would it be an oxidation?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, you get Cl minus, so
it's an oxidation because
oxidation.
You're putting
yes.
Cl minuses together.
Yeah, so if you had
that would happen at a really high potential, but anyway.
Yeah, that would happen. Yeah, I guess that would happen at a much
But let's just pretend it happens, right?
Yeah. If we pretend that happens,
right? Your catalyst is so good, it's like producing chlorine gas. It's like that happening means you're never going to like separate the current going towards chlorine formation or whatever other formation with the oxygen formation.
Yeah, you'd have to change your system to remove any chloride. You have to use a totally different,
or use a different solvent, use a different salt,
solvent.
Use a different, like you might have to change electrolyte entirely, or something like that.
And some people do stuff in non-aqueous systems literally for that very reason.
Yeah, because water has a narrow range.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, that's what the OER is kind of for. But
that's right.
But yeah, just as a general rule of thumb, it's like the water has a narrow range, and sometimes it can get ripped apart by catalysts.
Yeah.
So you have to change up catalyst, change up the salt, whatever.
Or if your catalyst is degrading,
that too.
Another thing.
Yeah, catalyst is
catalyst has its own intrinsic oxidation.
Its own oxidation is making you think it's electroactive, but it's just dying. And on that cheerful note,
come visit us at the
go to
ECS
Chicago and see Alex and Tim. And there will be no live stream next week. I'm not here next week.
And I'm going to be tired.
Yes. I will be at UNC Chapel Hill at another small conference called MUAC. It's like an education conference of some kind. So if you happen to be in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, come visit me. I'll be there. I don't know how many people are aware of this particular conference. ECS is the bigger one, of course. In any case, we will be back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for another episode here. We appreciate all the questions, and hopefully we've done it right and done our best anyway. And until 2 weeks from now.
Yep.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.